Good evening, everyone. I'm going to do a talk now really about the teachings of Plotinus, who I've mentioned earlier, but this is a bit more detail. It's called The Way of the Mystic, Ascent Through Love and Beauty. So let's start with a little bit about Plotinus. So Plotinus lived from 204 to 270 AD and was the most influential figure amongst the group that was later known as the Neoplatonists, the eclectic philosophical school founded by Ammonius Saccas. They were the first to call themselves Theosophists, and were also known as Philaletheans, meaning lovers of truth, and Analogetists, because of their emphasis on the law of correspondence and analogy in spiritual and philosophical teachings. Plotinus, who some consider to be Plato reincarnated, is held in very high regard by H.P. Blavatsky, and she devotes a good few pages in her book, The Key to Theosophy, to talking about Ammonius Saccas and the Neoplatonists, who she first mentioned in her first book, Isis Unveiled. It should be understood, however, that neither Ammonius Saccas, Plotinus, or their followers ever actually referred to themselves as Neoplatonists, or to their teachings as Neoplatonism. This term was coined over 1,000 years later by scholars as a convenient means by which to describe and identify them. In the Theosophical Glossary, H.P. Blavatsky says of Plotinus that he was the noblest, highest, and grandest of all the Neoplatonists after the founder of the school, Ammonius Saccas. He was the most enthusiastic of the Philaletheans, or lovers of truth, whose aim was to found a religion on a system of intellectual abstraction, which is true theosophy. Or this is also the whole substance of Neoplatonism. He taught a doctrine identical with that of the Vedantins, i.e. the majority of the Hindus, namely that the spirit soul emanating from the one deific principle was after its pilgrimage reunited to it. He also writes that Plotinus and his closest disciple Porphyry followed and practiced the pure Indian Raja Yoga training, which leads to the union of the soul with the oversoul, or higher self, which we call Buddhi Manas. So firstly, we have to ask ourselves, what is beauty? It seems an easy enough question, but in reality it is evasive. There's the old saying that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but much depends on which eye we are using. Sight has many different levels, and depending on where our consciousness is focused, dictates what we may regard as being beautiful. There is the Japanese concept of wabi-sabi, which finds beauty in imperfection and in the changes that surround us and are within us too. Old age is regarded as being something beautiful because of the changes in our appearance, etc., and the way we look at life. Plotinus, in his treatise on beauty, bases his ideas on the fact that beauty is an abstract concept that manifests in many ways while still remaining impersonal in essence. Beauty is beauty, whatever mask it wears, and true beauty proceeds from the spiritual side of our nature. It is the glimmering of the spirit within us or around us. And if we learn to read the message of beauty, it can become our guiding star through all the trials and temptations of life. For in all the manifestations of beauty, there is a hidden message, as Plotinus says, only lovers will ever find. When he says lovers, he refers not to lovers in a sentimental or sensual sense, but those who have nurtured within themselves an inexpressible yearning to go out towards the infinite, and have reached that point in their lives which has become the one essential thing, a line of life meditation. Otherwise, where do our studies and meditations lead us? We experience beauty in so many ways. Mainly, we think of it as pertaining perhaps to sight, the sense of sight. We also find beauty in music, poetry, paintings, as well as in traits of character in someone, or intellectual beauty. And as Plotinus says, the beauty of virtue, or deeper still. We can become aware of spiritual beauty in these things. When we come across something ugly to the soul, we feel a repulsion to it and recognize it as inimical to our awakening. Whereas when the soul meets with something it finds akin to it, it recognizes true beauty and flies to it as an ally. Is this why we may weep when seeing or hearing beautiful things? Because it increases in us this longing to go out towards the infinite, to return to our true home, to escape from the confining flesh that becomes like a prison when our consciousness stirs from its reveries. The aspirant's challenge in this sense is to recognize true beauty and intuitively know how to use this realization to further one's awakening from the dream of material life, divorced from spirituality of any kind. Plotinus gives us classic advice how to go about working on ourselves to become aware of our own divinity and that of others. He says, how can one see the beauty of a good soul? Withdraw into yourself and look. If you do not as yet see beauty within you, do as does the sculptor of a statue that is to be beautified. He cuts away here, he smooths it there, he makes this line lighter, this other one purer, until he disengages beautiful lineaments in the marble. Do you this too. Cut away all that is excessive, straighten all that is crooked, bring light to all that is overcast, labour to make all one radiance of beauty. Never cease working at the statue until there shines out upon you from it the divine sheen of virtue, until you see perfect goodness firmly established in stainless shrine. Have you become like this? Do you see yourself abiding within yourself in pure solitude? Does nothing now remain to shatter that interior purity and unity, nor anything external cling to your authentic self? Are you entirely that sole true light, which is not contained by space, not confined to any circumscribed form, not diffused as something without term, but ever unmeasurable as something greater than all measure and something more than all quantity? Do you see yourself in this state? Then you have become vision itself. Be of good heart. Remaining here, you have ascended aloft. You need a guide no longer. Strain and see. Only the mind's eye can contemplate this mighty beauty. But if it comes to contemplation purblind with vice, impure, weak, without the strength to look upon brilliant objects, it then sees nothing, even if it is placed in the presence of an object that can be seen. Let each one, therefore, become godlike and beautiful, who would contemplate the divine and beautiful. End of quote. I've always found this to be the most useful advice of all. Pygmalion carved his perfect woman, Galatea, from marble, and Aphrodite gave her life. Disillusioned with his experience of womanhood at the time, he created his own image of beauty. One could say that in Galatea, he saw something akin to the soul's beauty. He found the missing part of his being that longed for completion. So he fashioned this perfect image, but without love, it was just a lump of stone, no matter how beautiful the external form. In the same way, it is love that brings us to life, that animates our very being on all levels. It is real life, and without it, we are just statues or mannequins. Widening the scope and depth of our love is the alchemy that makes us truly human. This, of course, creates many challenges. Jesus says in the Bible that even a criminal loves his own family and friends. Hitler was said to have loved his dog and Eva Braun. Yet he could perpetrate such horrors on the Jews, etc., without feeling any remorse or understanding the suffering of another human being. He was also said to be an anti-vivisectionist and a vegetarian, though rather lax one at times, I think. Yet he still abhorred animal cruelty and even chastised Eva Braun for wearing cosmetics that contained animal products. So on the surface, if one was unaware of the horrors that the Nazi party inflicted on innocent people, then they may think of Hitler as quite a nice, caring man. Never judged by appearances, one way or the other. Also, I have noticed that in many New Age type posts on Facebook, etc., we're advised to seek the company of those who lift our spirits and avoid those who are negative. This is not what the esoteric schools teach, if we are to believe these words in The Light on the Path, which was written by Mabel Collins. And she says, "Do not fancy you can stand aside from the bad man or the foolish man. They are yourself, though in a lesser degree than your friend or your master. But if you allow the idea of separateness from any evil thing or person to grow up within you, by doing so you create karma, which will bind you to that thing or person till your soul recognizes that it cannot be isolated. Remember that the sin and shame of the world are your sin and shame. For you're a part of it. Your karma is inextricably interwoven with the great karma. And before you can attain knowledge, you must have passed through all places foul and clean alike. Therefore remember that the soiled garment you shrink from touching may have been yours yesterday, or maybe yours tomorrow. And if you turn with horror from it, what is flung upon your shoulders, it will cling the more closely to you. The self-righteous man makes for himself a bed of mire. Abstain because it is right to abstain, not that yourself should be made clean." End of quote. So the real test is to love those whose lifestyle is different from ours, and who we may feel an antipathy to because we may have been as they are, or maybe in future lives. We must never grow complacent. These are the ones who most need our love. Until we love everyone unconditionally, there's still work to do. I've read books and seen quotes which have said that it is not possible to love everyone, therefore we should try at least not to hate them. But to me, this is a bit of a cop-out. If we are to become the vehicles of universal harmony, which we call love on the physical level, there can be no exceptions in the end, though the process of working towards it may be arduous and long, depending on our level of application and devotion to the work. But we should not set any limits to what we can achieve, otherwise we will become satisfied with something less than we are capable of. And as potential gods in the making, there are no limits except the ones we create for ourselves. Of course, we know that there is something much deeper than physical beauty. Someone could be physically repulsive and yet have a beautiful mind or soul. And this kind of beauty requires another level of understanding beyond sight or the physical senses. Also, someone could be very beautiful to look at and yet quite a nasty person, quite an ugly, twisted person. It is an intuitive awareness of beauty which is able to see behind the mask. As Plotinus says, only those who have learned to love can see this true beauty, which is often hidden behind a facade of what we may regard as ugliness. He says, these lovers of beauty beyond the realm of senses ought to declare themselves. These lovers of beauty beyond the realm of senses ought to declare themselves. Think on that. Like Jesus says, don't you hide your light under a bushel. Plotinus then goes on to say, what is your experience of beholding beauty in the souls of those around you? What do you feel when you have seen that you are also beautiful within? What is this intoxication, this exultation, this longing to break away from the body and live sunken within themselves and within yourselves? All true lovers experience this. But what awakens so much passion? It is not shape or colour or size. It is the soul, itself colourless, and the soul's temperance and the hueless lustre of its virtue. It is the soul itself, colourless, and it's the soul's temperance and the hueless lustre of its virtues. In yourself or others, you see largeness of spirit, goodness of life, chasteness, the courage behind a majestic countenance, gravity, the self-respect that pervades a temperament that is calm and at peace and without passion. And above them all, you see the radiance of the intelligence diffusing itself through them all. They are attractive, they are lovable. Why are they said to be beautiful? because clearly they are beautiful, and anyone that sees them must admit that they are true realities. What sort of realities? Beautiful ones. But reason wants to know why they make the soul lovable, wants to know what it is that, like a light, shines through all the virtues. What it is that shines like a light through all the virtues. So Plotinus tells us to bring light to all that is overcast. We need to fill ourselves with light to chase away all the shadows in our being, the pure light of our higher self or divine nature. This can only be done by facing up to our fears, our prejudices, our doubts and our insecurities. We cannot do it by becoming hothouse plants. Hothouse plants grow beautifully in their protective, in the greenhouse, and become the most beautiful of all. But taken out of their protective environment and exposed to the elements, they soon die. So as mentioned earlier, if we shield ourselves from those things we find repulsive, our progress becomes very flabby. And when karma forces us to face those things that we have been avoiding, we will be found wanting. So love is what we should be cultivating above all else. And as said, more for those people or situations we find the most repulsive to us, because they are the real test, and the journey is one of practical experience and not of theoretical discussion or study, and not just of theoretical discussion or study. So Plotinus says, we must close our eyes and invoke a new manner of seeing, a wakefulness that is the birthright of us all, though few put it to use. We must close our eyes and invoke a new manner of seeing, a wakefulness that is the birthright of us all, though few put it to use. So we have to see things differently than others, wake up to what we really are. As theosophical students and students of any true spiritual path, our views should be, for the most part, almost the opposite of those that a society based on material values holds. Most of us go through life sleepwalking, almost, and create a fantasy world in which death does not exist and is rarely mentioned. We set ourselves up here as if we are going to live forever, instead of just for a few short decades. Our worldview needs to change so that we can see that as personalities, we are like mayflies, but as individuals, as spiritual beings, we are immortal. Then the idea of death disintegrates, and we transcend the things of this world, while still living in it and functioning as human beings. We are children of the light, denizens of eternity, if only we can cease to see through the glass darkly and let the sunlight pour through the windows of the heart unobstructed. So beauty is the light of the spirit, the divine in its many manifestations on all the levels of our being. And it only appears to be different because of the way that it manifests and in the way that we perceive it, whether it's through the sense of sight, touch, taste, smell, or hearing, or through the mind or the intuition. Love proceeds from the same source and can be invoked through an appreciation of beauty. Love is the manifestation in us of the harmony that suffuses the universe and finds a home in us if we just allow it to. We love someone or something because of an awareness of their beauty, whether that beauty be inner or outer or both. Love can be of the most sensual kind, or it can be love of humanity, because we recognize the spiritual beauty of humanity behind all the cacophony of the world as it seems to be. On the way to the highest manifestations of love, there are many steps and there are many challenges. Through our meditations and studies, we should always have this widening and deepening of love as our motive, and an awareness of the fact that in essence we are one, and the same light shines in each one of us. The same beauty is the birthright of us all. We can find this beauty within and realize it is the same beauty that is in the eyes of everyone, behind the eyes of everyone. The eyes are the windows of the soul. It is the same beauty that is in the music we listen to, or the stars that we gaze upon, or the flowers in the meadowlands, or words that we read, or feelings that we have. We know for a fact that beautiful sounds or sights or even scents fill our beings with a sense of harmony, which even in its lowest manifestations contains the seed of a love that can become universal if cultivated. Beautiful acts by others evoke pure emotions, and again, although emotions will be transcended in time, they are a necessary step on the journey upwards. The purifying of emotions is a stage in the alchemy of the heart, until they become this inexpressible yearning of the inner man or woman to go out towards the infinite, as mentioned earlier. It is the inner being wishing to break its mind-forged manacles and escape the confining flesh to live its true life. As the Mahachohan, who was the master's master, the great, a very high spiritual being, he says all of us have to get rid of our own ego, the illusory apparent self, to recognize our true self in a transcendental, divine life. So Plotinus states that beauty dwells in the intelligible realms, as does love, meaning that they have reality in the manifested universe. But he speaks of what he calls the good, which is beyond both beauty and love, and from which both of these proceed. This may equate with the absolute, which is above any designations, and therefore cannot be spoken about or even imagined or imaged. So like everything else in this manifested or intelligible universe, they are ultimately stepping stones, because intelligible means capable of being understood by use of the intellect. We all must know the first fundamental proposition of the Theosophical Society, which is an omnipresent, eternal, boundless and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, since it transcends the power of human conception and can only be dwarfed by any human expression or similitude. It is beyond the range and reach of thought. In the words of the Mandukya, unthinkable and unspeakable. The Mandukya is one of the Upanishads. But then, of course, we move into the intelligible realms, where love and beauty come into being, amongst other things, but all manifestations of the One. They can be said to be the stairway to heaven. They bring something that is ultimately incomprehensible into the range and reach of thought and the intuition. They at least give us an inkling of what lies beyond all thought and the means to reach the transcendent stage. The mind needs such sources of inspiration and aspiration to lead it ever onwards to higher and higher planes of being, and also to infuse the inner man or woman with inklings of an ever-increasing and deepening awareness of the beauty of our own true nature. As H.P. Blavatsky states in the Key to Theosophy, we go from strength to strength, from the beauty and perfection of one plane to the greater beauty and perfection of another, with accessions of new glory, of fresh knowledge and power in each cycle. Such is the destiny of every ego, which thus becomes its own saviour in each world and incarnation. So we meet with challenges all the way, but if we have focused our mind in the right way, everything that happens will help us to unfold our spiritual nature. Everything helps, even though we may go through some very difficult times. But all around us and within us is the beauty and love to urge us onwards. So beauty is a reminder of our spiritual nature in whatever form it manifests in the world. Of course, the beauty is really within us. It is just stirred by things we see and hear and experience. As Khalil Gibran says, beauty is not in the face. Beauty is a light in the heart. Beauty is not in the face. Beauty is a light in the heart. So what we see and experience as beauty are reminders and pointers to the beauty within us. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, the most beautiful people we have known are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen. So these are the challenges that we meet with every day, and the battles we go through to blossom forth as true human beings. Love and compassion are what life should teach us every step of the way, to understand rather than condemn, and to always try to help if it is needed. The talisman is to look upon everyone as potential spiritual beings. See that we must always be helping others to develop their spirituality, and never through negativity push them further down with feelings of repulsion or hatred. There's beauty hidden in every soul, no matter how dark it may appear on the surface. It just needs to be brought to the surface. And this can be done by adopting a positive attitude to everyone we come into contact with, and trying to see the beauty of the true human condition within them. So keep working on that statue. In what ways do we not love? Why do we feel enmity towards someone or something or someone when we know such an attitude is negative and unhelpful to them and to ourselves? Take time to step back from the rush and see and feel the beauty of the world, and particularly that of our fellow human beings. And as Plotinus says, never cease working at that statue until there shines out upon you from it the divine sheen of virtue, until you see perfect goodness firmly established in stainless shrine. Wise words from a quotation I used earlier. And that may not just refer to our own individual statue, but the way in which we view humanity as a whole. So thank you very much for listening. Om Shanti, 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 peace, 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 peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. See you very soon, hopefully.